Welcome to another episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Jesus Christ died and he rose again. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, Rudy Tomjanovich, two-time NBA champion, winning coach. Okay, lifelong Rocket. Okay. I know he did coach the Lakers for a short time, but he resigned midway through the 2005 season. Okay, and so had a nice career, a really good career with the Houston Rockets. I believe he's in the Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, yeah, played for the Rockets from 1970 through 81. Was on the 81 squad that went to the NBA Finals versus Celtics. Then after that, became an assistant coach with the Rockets. Worked under Dale Harris, Bill Fitch, Don Chaney. Okay, and later on, when he was coach, one of the former Rocket players, they called him Mr. Mean. Y'all remember Mr. Mean? Larry Smith? Yeah, number 13 was Hakeem Olajuwon's backup in Houston from 1990 to 1992. They called him Mr. Mean, okay, because Larry Smith looked mean, okay. He looked mean, but he was soft-spoken, okay. Yeah, so Larry Smith was one of Rudy Tomjanovich's assistants when Larry Smith retired at the end of the 1992 season. So he became Rudy T's assistant, lifelong assistant, until Tomjanovich left after the 2003 season. Okay. So, but how did Rudy Tomjanovich become a head coach? Okay. Well, it was during the 1991-92 season, okay? Don Chaney was the coach, okay? And the Houston Rockets had got off to an 8-2 start, okay? They started off the season really well. They got off to an 8-2 start, but they slumped, okay? They slumped so badly that after 51 games, they were only 26 and 25, okay? And so they lost to a Dallas Mavericks team a few days earlier, who were the Mavericks, who came into that game 14 and 35. Okay, the Mavericks were 14 and 35 in that game, but this is the game that got Don Chaney fired. Okay, this is the game that got Don Chaney fired and brought in Rudy T. Okay, they were playing one of the worst teams in the league, the Minnesota Timberwolves, at home. Okay. And so they were leading the Minnesota Timberwolves by 24, okay? They led the Timberwolves by 24 points, okay? And the Minnesota Timberwolves, who were 9-40, coming into the game. The Timberwolves, who were 9-40, coming into the game, okay? I'm gonna say it one more time. The Houston Rockets led the Minnesota Timberwolves by 24 points in that game. Somehow, some way, the Minnesota Timberwolves came back and won the game in overtime, 124 to 122. I kid you not. I kid you not. The Timberwolves trailed by 24 points. Somehow, some way, the Rockets let them back into the game. And the Timberwolves won the game in overtime, 124 to 122. That's the game they got Don Chaney fired. Yeah, that's the game they got Don Chaney fired. You lose to a Timberwolves team that was 9-40. That's the game they got Don Chaney fired, and that's when the Rudy T era began. Okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you lose. Yeah. Yeah, you lose to one of the worst teams in the league, okay? Especially blowing a 24-point lead like that. That kind of makes sense, okay? That makes sense, firing your coach. You get off to an 8-2 start, you slump, you lose to a bad Mavericks team, you lose to the worst team in the league, the Minnesota Timberwolves, firing Don Chaney. That makes sense. Then again, you have other teams that fire their coaches for no reason, like the New York Knicks, who fired Tom Thibodeau for no reason. Right? Right? And now, every coach the Knicks want to talk to, they said no. Okay? Even the Chicago Bulls said, hey, no. He said, hell no, you ain't interviewing Billy Donovan. But I said, this. I said the New York Knicks have been a joke of a franchise ever since Patrick Ewing and Jeff Van Gundy left the building early in the new millennium. Okay, the New York Knicks have been in a joke since. Okay, so the Chicago Bulls probably have two records that won't be broken. Probably have two records that won't be broken, okay? So, they came in to the league as an expansion team in 1966. They won 33 games their first year, 1966-67, and they made the playoffs, okay? They went 33-48. Yeah, they went 33-48. The NBA officially switched to an 82-game season in 1968. Okay. So they were playing 81 games at that time, but the NBA went to a full 82-game format in 1968. Okay. So they went 33-48, made the playoffs. However, and y'all have to remember now, this is 1968. Okay. There weren't that many teams in the league in 1968. So the Chicago Bulls in 1968, they started off the season 2-16, right? Yeah, they started off the season 2-16, and at one point they were 18-39. The Chicago Bulls might be the only team in NBA history, the 1968 Chicago Bulls, might be the only team in NBA history to win 29 games and make the NBA playoffs. You heard that right. The Chicago Bulls won 29 games in 1968 and made the playoffs. In case you didn't hear me again, the Chicago Bulls won 29 games in 1968 and made the playoffs. That's the only time in NBA history, okay? I think it's safe to say that's the only time in NBA history that a team wins less than 30 games and makes the NBA playoffs. I know, right? I know, right? How does a team go 29-53 and make the playoffs? Somehow the Chicago Bulls did in 1968, right? Don't make sense. Don't make sense. So let's fast forward to 1986, okay? Michael Jordan's second year. He gets injured the third game of the year. The Bulls win 30 games and make the playoffs. They go 30-52 and make the playoffs. Yeah. So that's what I meant when I say the Chicago Bulls have two records that will probably never be broken, because the league has expanded so much that you ain't gonna get into the playoffs winning less than 30 games, okay? And you sure as hell are not gonna get into the playoffs within 30 games. Okay. All right. So that's insane, though. The more you think about it, the Bulls winning 29 games in 1968 and making the playoffs. That's crazy. Going 30 and 52 and making the playoffs. That's crazy too. But it was 1968. It was 1986, and the NBA was in a different. And the NBA was in a different world. The NBA was in different worlds back then. Okay. So, also of note, the 2005 Bulls. Okay, coached by Scott Skiles. They started off the season 2-13, ended up 47-35, and made the playoffs. Okay, so Steve Smith. Okay. Here we go. So Steve Smith, probably one of the best 3-point shooters, probably one of the best 2 guards in his day. He tells a story of how there were trade rumors he was involved in when he was in Portland, and he went back to Portland, and then so he went up to see Bob Whitsitt in Seattle, trade rumors. And he said, "No, Steve, you're not going to go home with nowhere." Then Steve Smith was like, then the next day, I was traded. Okay? So we're going to let Steve Smith talk about it.
That night, we were looking at the video, and what everybody on the panel was doing is saying, give us a straight face. There was no emotion on your face. It was just like, this is what I do.
It was. We were losing that game. But I think my individual game that I really remembered, I was traded for Steve Kerr and Derek Anderson from Portland. And it's the business of basketball. I drove up to Seattle to visit Bob Whitsitt, our general manager, because it was trade rumors about me getting traded. And he said, "Oh, no, Steve, you're not going anywhere." The next morning, I was traded. So I marked that game when we went back to Portland. I was 8 for 8 from behind the line, and I was really mad at Pop.
I remember.
Mad at Pop because he took me out, Rich. I wanted that. Let me have that game. 8 for 8. I got a tech because I was going at Bob Whitsitt, the general manager.
You were glaring at it. He was sitting
with Paul Allen, and every time I hit a shot, Reg, I kept looking at it. That was the game for me because I had X'd that game because he had told me you wasn't get traded, which that's the business. By the time I got back home from driving to Seattle, he traded me the next morning.
Wow. We looked at your 51-point game. I don't know who.
Yeah. So, Steve Smith, 8 for 8 from the 3-point line. 13 of 19 shooting overall, 36 points. And you heard him. He was looking at Bob Whitsitt the whole time. He was looking at Bob Whitsitt the whole time saying, "Yeah, how you like me now?" And the referee actually gave him a check too, if you heard that. So, yeah, I just thought that was a interesting story to tell about Steve Smith. All right, that's it, and that's all for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I pray God blesses you all with blessings. Amen.
TunePocket.com.